Welcome back, WNST. Sunday night games anymore, not just because we don't win them sometimes, but they mess with my sleep patterns, and this messes up my my ability to do radio. I do not recommend an hour between 4 a.m. and 5, an hour on the plane from 6 till 7, an hour at home from 8 until 9, and then an hour at home from 12 until 1. But such is life after a late game on a Sunday night in Pittsburgh. Feels a lot better when you win. Dennis Koulatsos is our guy. He will be here on Thursday driving you home as the SSV on WNST continues on, and I follow him on Twitter. And Dennis, I want to say this. You said momentum was on the Ravens' side at one point, and certainly when it was an 11-point lead heading into the fourth quarter, even when they had staved off their problems and made it a 9-point game on the Tucker field goal, all of it was sitting there, and all of it was sitting there for a win. And I know they didn't need to win the football game. They weren't going to win the division because of it, and I know it was a representative effort, but it really, really stings to look up and see Ben Roethlisberger with 506 yards and 66 passes and realizing that was an incredible lost opportunity for the Ravens on Sunday night in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no question about it, Nestor. We went down by 14. My message to the Ravens faithful was, look, this one's far from over. And once we got the lead, I said, look, don't get complacent, because until that last second clicks off the clock, we haven't won this thing. We haven't won anything. And those of us that have watched this rivalry for the last 22 years, we know better. We know it comes down to the last second. It seemed like the team that has the ball with 2 minutes left, Nestor, always loses. It seemed like the team that gets the ball last in this series, that's the team that wins. And the other night, again, that proved to be true once again. And we were heartbroken, but what a very entertaining game. 39-38. Couldn't ask for much more than that, except, of course, for Ravens' victory.
Well, and breaking it down one by one, let's start with this. The pass rush needs to be better if you want to beat Ben Roethlisberger, period.
Yes. Yeah. He had all day to throw. I mean, he was back there. That's something that when I noticed by most fans, you picked up on it, I picked up on it for sure. They just couldn't get to Roethlisberger, particularly in the second half. He had all day long, and when you give him an extra second or two with the kind of receivers he has with Antonio Brown in particular, that's way too much time for those cats to be covered. We just can't stick with him long enough, and he'll find the open man, as we saw.
Well, and in the case of 66 passes and 44 completions and Antonio Brown, clearly without Jimmy Smith, there was no answer for Antonio Brown either. And the way the tight ends got loose there, it really does frighten me if they have to go to New England and see Gronkowski in his prime.
No question. And I also thought that 3rd and 13 with a minute 57 left in the game was huge. They had an opportunity to maybe get Pittsburgh off the field. More than likely, they would have punted in that situation as they had 3 timeouts left. But we didn't get to see that because they couldn't hold them on 3rd and 13. So they had them down a couple of times, could have put the game away. On the flip side of the ball, they could have ran the ball more effectively towards the end and committed to the run. And look, everything that could go wrong went wrong. And this was, again, another typical heartbreaking Ravens-Steelers loss. It was just very, very bad, a very, very bad loss. Left a sour taste all over our mouths. I saw your tweets, and
I was angry after the game, and I sense the people on Twitter who are angry or whatever, and I sense that some of them spend their whole lives angry, quite frankly. I mean, year after year, how many times John Harbaugh has been fired on the internet and cut, and this Brandon Carr is going to get cut. I mean, the outrageousness with which people speak on the internet during games, that's not my gig. That's not my job. That's not what I do, and I don't need to fend it off, but there was a point for me walking down to the locker room, and I'm like, how in the world are you going to justify this loss when the game was sitting there, when Flacco led the team back, and for all he's been maligned, and all these wide receivers and the problems they've had, they did everything they needed to do offensively to win the football game on Sunday night. And given where the offense has been, specifically the first 10 weeks of the season, which was moribund, this was something that they were going to be able to come back and hang their hat on it and say, well, we beat the Steelers up in Pittsburgh. We did it with offense, and we can go do it again in January. I mean, maybe they'll go up there and win again next month, and maybe they'll get through whatever Kansas City or Jacksonville or whatever is in front of them. But I wouldn't want to take my chances with seeing the Steelers again next month up there after seeing what Roethlisberger broke out his carving knife on Sunday night.
Well, our only saving grace, Nestor, it's very hard to beat a team 3 times in a year. We've seen that before. We've seen the Steelers beat the Ravens twice in regular season, only to succumb to them during the playoffs. But for me, I don't know how you let Antonio Brown off the line of scrimmage. I don't know how you don't tackle him, take him down by the jersey, get a 5-yard penalty for holding, versus him run free downfield, give him the free release in the manner and fashion that the Ravens did. Why Marlon Humphrey didn't follow him all over the field is beyond me. I understand they like to play sides, but at some point, you got to throw caution to the wind and match up your best cover corner against your best receiver and give yourself a fighting chance. Now, it's going to be interesting to see New England that has a much worse defense than the Ravens and watch what Bill Belichick does as he takes away the Steelers' best offensive weapons and see what that outcome looks like then.
Well, that'll be a lovely Sunday afternoon this week as we watch the Patriots take on the Steelers. Meanwhile, the Ravens move on to the Cleveland Browns, and I know you were red zoning it on Sunday as Luke and I sat in a welcome to Steelers country bar in the Pittsburgh suburbs eating wings and bad steak salads and drinking some cold beer. The Cleveland week here and where they are, and they're an improved team, right? I mean, they came very, very close to winning the football game on Sunday. I think all of us should be nervous about this Cleveland game this week in the aftermath of what happened to the Ravens on Sunday night.
Yeah, I think this is a bad time for the return of Josh Gordon. He still has a skill set, scored a touchdown against the Packers. They've got to be able to cover Mr. Gordon. He's in the same league, in the same category as Antonio Brown. A much bigger, much more physical receiver. So unless they can figure out how to cover him, it wouldn't shock me if the Browns came away with their first victory of the season against our Baltimore Ravens. This game is not going to be taken lightly. It's in their backyard. They have home court. They don't like us. Their fan base doesn't like us. And the Ravens have got to be able to put this game in the Steelers' loss in the rearview mirror and give their full attention to the Browns. This game is not going to be a layup. I think it's going to be a very competitive, very close game.
It's been a long time since you and I were young men watching the Colts at 0-8-1 and not winning games. Remember the old Patriots? That they were an 0-14 operation many moons ago. It is hard to go 0-16. I know the Detroit Lions pulled it off. The Browns tried to pull it off last year as well. Road games at the Bears, road games at the Steelers for the Browns. This is sort of their last best chance after playing overtime against Tennessee in October, overtime against the Packers. I expect to see the Browns' best shot this week. I'm not going to be the guy disparaging the Browns this week. I'll let the Cleveland media do that. But this is a very, very dangerous week for the Ravens, and danger in that if they lose this game somehow, some way, the playoff thing starts to get off track. And all this talk we've had the last month about, well, the end of the year, you got this Cleveland game, and then you're going to be at home against Jacoby Brissett. You're going to have Marvin at the end. Just going to be a cakewalk at the end. I don't think any of these games are a cakewalk, and I think it's a very dangerous week for the Ravens on the back end of what happened to them Sunday night.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I can envision a game against the Browns where Hugh Jackson elects to onside kick after every time they score, or fake punts, or flea flickers, or reverses. Any kind of trick play, I think Hugh Jackson is going to throw at the Ravens because he has nothing to lose. So no matter what kind of goofy things they try this Sunday, I would expect to see them from this Cleveland offense, and also whatever trickery and full blitzes they're going to try to get after with Joe Flacco on defense. I think they're going to throw caution to the wind. This is an extremely dangerous game against an extremely dangerous team that just fired the general manager. So players know that they're playing for their lives, they're playing for their careers here. They're all under scrutiny. They're going to have to put some good play on tape, or they risk not being there in the offseason, although I would think a lot of them are probably going to get the heck out of Cleveland. But but for our purposes, look, it's a very dangerous game. They've got to jump on them early and take away all their hopes of beating the Ravens. They can't let them hang around too long, because if they let them hang around too long, the danger there is they get into deep water and the Ravens end up drowning. That's why this Pittsburgh loss was so huge. It was there for the taking. The extra victory would have given the Ravens a little bit of margin of error, which right now they don't have when you have the fast-closing San Diego Chargers in particular in the rearview mirror. So it's there for the taking, but they've got to hold serve and win out the rest of the season if they hope to have a shot at the playoffs.
Boy, I watched a lot of football here the last couple weeks on the Red Zone and whatnot. Dennis Koulatsos joining us here. You can always follow his journey at SSV on WNST, out on Twitter as well as on Thursdays from 3 until 5 as he drives us home with the SSV on WNST. He's out of Coons Ford. Of course, they do our incredible text service. I'm sure the text service can be moving this week with the Orioles making all these moves down at the winter meeting, so I'm going to be watching that as well as watching the injury report. Dennis, we talk about the treachery of this game after the loss to the Steelers and the way they lost to the Steelers. I worry for Harbaugh and for the front office if somehow this team trips over its feet here the last 3 weeks and isn't that team playing in Jacksonville or Kansas City or Carson or Nashville, wherever it's going to be. I would think at this point where they were sitting at 7-5 with a lead, with a double-digit lead in Pittsburgh, that if they don't make the playoffs, if they're not playing the first week of January, given what the franchise has been through with the knee, with the empty seats, I would not want to tempt or test the patience of Steve Bisciotti at this point if this team's not in the tournament in January.
Well, that's a good point, Nestor. But I tell you what, on the positive side, the team showed up. They showed heart. They showed courage. They battled back. They were down by 2 touchdowns. They could have folded up for their 10th and gone home, but they fought real, real hard. I think it's a matter of talent, particularly asset on the offensive side of the ball. And if I'm Steve Bisciotti, I look for a very strong draft in 2018 on the offensive side of the ball and pray for some good health, or they've got to do something, bring in maybe a third party to investigate how are they working out, how can they minimize these season-ending injuries for this team. But in terms of effort and resilience and everything else, I think that John Harbaugh still has very much command of this team. This team played extremely hard. And for me, it's not to me. It's the Jimmies, the Joes versus the X's and the O's. I just don't think they have the players at this point on the offensive side of the ball that can get you that extra first down, that can put the game on ice, that would make the difference. I think they have a great running back in Alex Collins. If I'm the GM, I'm getting some extra offensive linemen and also some wide receivers that can catch. Chris Moore got hurt in the other night, and when he went out, that really hurt the Ravens' offense. He was getting hot with Joe Flacco, but they need to draft Joe Flacco, a real wide receiver that's young, that can get separation, that has sticky hands. Get him a couple of those guys and some offensive linemen, and let's see where that offense goes from that point forward. So I don't think it's coaching as much as it is of players right now.
But you mentioned Alex Collins. I mean, I have not talked probably enough about him this week and what that game represented for him, running against the stout Steeler defense, running hard, running away, breaking tackles, running down the sidelines after catching the ball, catching passes as well. Boy, this thing has blossomed with him, and we've forgotten all about Kenneth Dixon and Terrence West, haven't we?
Exactly right, Nestor. So for next season, looking forward, I'm looking for Alex Collins to be the starter. I'm looking for Ken Dixon to spell him as long as he can stay out of trouble. And Buck Allen, he looks like Marcus Allen to me around the goal line, dare I say. He has great forward body lean, so I think they have their running back positions filled out. If they can get the big boys figured out in front of them, if they can build a Dallas Cowboy offensive line in front of Alex Collins and Ken Dixon and Joe Flacco and keep them upright, I think this team can make a lot of noise next season. That's why if I'm Steve Bisciotti, I would definitely give this coaching staff another shot with hopefully better players and better health next season.
Do you feel like Flacco's 100% healthy? I don't necessarily, and every time I see him short-arm a ball the way he did on the first interception, and more short-arming than long-arming all year long, he would say to me, and he did say to me after the game on Sunday, it's more timing than it is anything else. I don't like the way he's throwing off the back foot, and I really don't. I don't like passes that are short. I'd rather see these passes that are long, and I think that's the story of his career, is missing over the top, not missing underneath and going low. I haven't seen him miss in the dirt much, but these short passes that have gotten picked off, it is a little concerning to me. And I don't know that when it's all over with that he'll look back on this year and say that he was ever really right.
Well, in his defense, how many quarterback coaches has he had throughout his career? How many offensive coordinators? How many different schemes? But to his detriment, now the book on him is he just doesn't put in the time to work on his footwork, to work on his mechanics, to get rid of those bad habits that Gary Kubiak and Rick Dennison had him working on. Is he healthy? I don't know. He seems to be healthier now than he's been in a couple of years. But and the receivers, that he hasn't had a consistency with his receivers to be able to develop timing. I mean, give me a receiver that's been out there for more than several games at a time. Macklin, he goes down. Wallace goes down. Campanero goes out. Moore goes out. Perryman can't catch. So the other part of it is he's never had the A.J. Green, the Antonio Brown, the Amari Cooper, the Julio Jones receiver in his defense. So my thing with Joe Flacco is before we condemn Joe Flacco, let's get him that offensive line. Let's get him those toys, those stars, those receivers that can actually catch the ball, win 50-50 jump balls, and gain separation before we condemn him. I think he deserves it, particularly at this point of his career. He knows what to do. After that first awful interception, he cleaned it up. Yes, he short-armed a few throws. Yes, when they had a three-man rush on him on his last drive, he rushed the pass and threw a very poor pass. But let's get him some tools and put some tools in front of him because he does have the arm strength and the leadership skills to be able to win another Super Bowl. But I think the organization owes Joe Flacco an offense. Last year, they hung him out to dry. I mean, he was sitting there watching, I'm sure, the draft, and the first 3 rounds, it was crickets. You know, what about Joe? Was somebody mad at him? Let's get him some real help and see what Joe Flacco does. Because I always kind of picture Joe Flacco in that Pittsburgh offense, in the Atlanta offense. How good can he be? I mean, Carson Wentz goes out there, and they give him Torrey Smith and Alshon Jeffrey, and they get him some running backs, and they get him a great offensive line. Let's see how Joe Flacco can do with those kind of weapons around him.
Macklin targeted 11 times, 3 ball. Where are we with Macklin? I
tell you what,
I'm not a fan at this point. I don't.
No.
From a leadership standpoint, from a quitting on balls, from a fight standpoint, I thought he was better than this. I really did. I think the Chiefs believe that. So did the Eagles back in the day.
Yeah, you echo the sentiments of Ravens Nation. Twitter, the Twitterverse was going nuts about his performance against the Steelers. Did not like it at all. Thought he had quit on a couple of balls, and it was easy to see maybe now why, in retrospect, the Eagles gave up on him. As you mentioned, the Chiefs also gave up on him, but he's been a huge disappointment. And you got to show up in a game against the Steelers. That is a gut check game. It's a big boy game, and he failed to come through when it counted the most. So to me, they've got to move on and get Joe Flacco some real receivers that'll fight for the ball, that'll stay on the field, that are tough guys, that'll block until the whistle ends and can stay healthy. They need that. But to your point about Macklin, huge disappointment, particularly in the Pittsburgh game.
You mentioned big boy pants, and we talk about the Steelers, and far be it from me to want to praise Mike Tomlin or want to praise Ben Roethlisberger or Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown or any of the guys that made plays. But, even Boswell kicking 4 field goals, making 3 extra points on a cold night, hit a 52-yarder, hit a couple of 40-something yarders, and we are the ones with the kicker, right? We're the ones that think that we're going to have the kicker that's going to win the game. We didn't even need our kicker to win the game. We had such a lead at that point. There's a moxie about this Steelers team on the back end of the Shazier injury. I think there's a moxie about Roethlisberger, and I think we saw it last Monday night, late at night against Cincinnati when they were losing 17-0. The same as we did this past week on Sunday night when we were winning by 11 points this week. The Steelers now at 11-2 taking on this New England team. I sense something about Roethlisberger here at the end that when you're 11-2 and it's December and you're standing upright and feeling yourself and throwing for 506 yards on 66 attempts, there's something that really allows me to believe it will be them and not the Patriots that we're going to be seeing in Minnesota when we're doing our Super Bowl broadcasts.
Well, this was a terrific game by the Steelers, and I even said, let's just give them some credit because they had every excuse not to show up Sunday night against the Ravens. They had this severe injury very much on their minds and their hearts, had taken a tremendous emotional toll on his team for him not to be there in the locker room, not to be there on the sideline, not to be there on the field. They came off of a very physical game against the Bengals on a short week and showed up big against the Ravens and went toe-to-toe with them. Again, they could have also gone away when they were down by 9 points, but they didn't. They came storming back. I'm not a huge fan of the Steelers, never have been, never will be, but I respect the heck out of them. That's why I'm very curious to see their matchup against the Patriots, just to see how much influence those X's and O's make that Matt Patricia and Bill Belichick will throw at the Patriots. But look, Roethlisberger, he knows he's playing for a 3rd Super Bowl. This may be his last shot to get one, and at 2 Super Bowls under his belt, I think he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. A 3rd one certainly solidifies his legacy, puts him right up there with Troy Aikman with the all-time greats.
I've seen a lot of football games. I ain't never seen a guy throw for 506 yards on 66 passes. I mean, well, look, Luke and I get on a plane, go up there Sunday, just looking to see a 16-13, 20-17 slobber knocker that we usually see. Yeah. Instead, we saw 80 points. You never know what you're going to get in this league, right?
You never know. I bet you Big Ben was icing his elbow after the game. He had thrown so many doggone passes. These Ravens-Steelers games, they're all unique. They're all special. This was a classic game. Unfortunately, we were at the wrong end of that 39-38 outcome, but when you look at it from the outside, I would say that the entire nation had to be entertained in this game, and I guarantee you the ratings should have been high. This was football at its highest level. Two teams playing like everything was on the line, and it was.
Football at its highest level. We haven't seen a whole lot of that going on here this year in the league. We spent a lot more Mondays bitching about how bad the games are and how bad the league is and how bad the product is and all that. For 1 week, we'll keep it quiet. Then we'll go see the Browns play this week. How about that?
Yep, and you also mentioned at least 15,000 empty seats at their stadium. That caught my attention when you put that out there, Nestor.
Tickets were $20, to get in on Sunday.
That's crazy.
Literally. Yeah.
For Steelers-Ravens match like that with everything with what was at stake, that's incredible.
Dennis, what's going on out of Coons Florida Security Boulevard? I know you got some incredible things happening there as well.
Oh, incredible deals in cars, trucks, SUVs. It's year-end clearance sale. Everybody knows we're trying to clear out the decks of all the 2017s. They have heat. They have air conditioning. They have a warranty. You can get 0% for 72 months, plus cash back from Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Credit still giving up 0%. We got a full-service body shop to clean up all the fender benders this time of the year. Service parts department, one-stop shop for all of your automotive needs, right here at Coons Baltimore Ford.
Dennis, we will see you on Thursday with the SSV on WNST. We'll be following you out on Twitter as well. And I don't. If we lose in Cleveland on Sunday, I might not come home. I might just jump in the lake out there.
Yeah, it won't be good. And as you mentioned earlier, it could start. The owner thinking in a different direction. That's how critical this game is. I think this team must make the playoffs in order to alleviate any off-season concerns regarding the coaching staff and the front office. We could see changes in both if this team fails to make the playoffs for the fourth year out of the last 5. No doubt about it.
No room, no margin for error at this point. He is Dennis Koulatsos. It is the SSV on WNST. You can follow him on Twitter as well as hear him here on Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. All sponsored by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, who also sponsor our WNST Tech Service. I have joked widely about the Orioles winter meetings and Dan Duquette and the circus going on down in Orlando. If there is any breaking news from there or from the Ravens or anywhere else in the local sports area, I would say you'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.